The stars were quiet that night. Too quiet. On the edge of Rexian space, Lieutenant Caro watched his scanner screen with growing unease. He had been monitoring the deep space sensors for 12 hours straight, and something felt wrong. The readings made no sense. Caro pressed a button on his console and called his supervisor. Within minutes, the command center was full of nervous officers staring at the same impossible data. Massive gravitational waves were coming from empty space. Something huge was approaching. Something that should not exist. Admiral Taeyang Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and watched the stars appear around his ship. The jump from faster-than-light travel always made his stomach twist, but after 30 years of military service, he barely noticed anymore. Behind his flagship, 49,999 other human vessels dropped out of their jumps in perfect formation. The fleet stretched across space like a metal ocean. Battleships the size of mountains. Carriers packed with fighter craft. Destroyers bristling with weapons. This was the largest military force humanity had ever built. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier existed for one purpose: revenge. Commander Hannah Park walked up beside the Admiral and handed him a data pad. Her face showed no emotion, but Kim knew her well enough to see the fire behind her eyes. She had waited 30 years for this moment. They all had. "All ships report ready status," Park said quietly. "The fleet is yours to command." Kim nodded slowly. He thought about Earth, about the day the Vrexians came. He had been a young captain then, commanding a small patrol ship far from home. He remembered the emergency broadcasts, the screaming, the silence that followed when 3 billion people died in a single afternoon. The Vrexians had come to Earth looking for slaves and resources. They found a peaceful species that had never fought an interstellar war. The battle lasted 6 hours. Earth's defense fleet was destroyed completely. The planet's major cities were burned from orbit. Millions were taken as slaves. The rest were left to die slowly on a ruined world. But humanity did not die. The survivors dug into the ashes and rebuilt. Every factory, every mine, every shipyard worked day and night. Children grew up learning mathematics and engineering instead of art and music. The entire species focused on one goal: make the Vrexians pay. It took 30 years. 30 years of sacrifice, of suffering, of turning every resource into weapons and ships. 30 years of remembering. Now the bill had come due. "Maintain radio silence," Kim ordered. "All ships advance. Standard formation. No communication with any Vrexian forces." The fleet began to move forward like a giant predator stalking its prey. Silent, deadly, inevitable. On Vrexia Prime, Emperor Thren Valdris reclined on his throne and listened to the reports with mild curiosity. An unknown fleet had appeared at the border. Large, yes. Possibly dangerous. But the Emperor had ruled for 400 years and seen countless threats come and go. His empire controlled 47 star systems. His military was the most powerful in the known galaxy. What could possibly threaten him? How many ships? Valdris asked his military advisor. 50,000, Your Majesty. Perhaps more. They appeared at grid reference 447. The Emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. Grid 447. That was the region where his forces had found those primitive creatures 30 years ago. What had they called themselves, humans? He remembered ordering the attack personally. It had been a minor operation, barely worth his attention. The humans survived? Valdris asked with surprise. Interesting. I did not think them capable of building even one warship, let alone 50,000. Shall I order the border fleets to investigate, Your Majesty? Yes, send 800 ships. That should be more than enough to deal with whatever these creatures have built. Capture some of them alive. I want to know how they developed this technology so quickly. The advisor bowed and left to carry out the orders. Valdris turned his attention back to more important matters. He had a state dinner to attend that evening and needed to choose which of his ceremonial robes to wear. Captain Ji-Wan Lee sat in the cockpit of his fighter and ran through his pre-flight checks for the 3rd time. Everything was perfect. His ship was brand new, built with technology that would have seemed like magic 30 years ago. Faster engines, better weapons, shields that could take a direct hit from a Vrexian cruiser and keep flying. Lee was only 28 years old, but he was already one of the best pilots in the fleet. He had never seen Earth before the attack. He had been born in an underground shelter on the colony world of New Sol, after the Vrexians destroyed that planet too. His mother died in childbirth. His father was killed fighting Vrexian slavers when Lee was 5 years old. He grew up in military academies and flight schools. He had never known peace. War was all he understood, and he was very good at it. All fighter pilots to standby status, a voice said over his headset. Prepare for possible deployment. Lee smiled coldly. Finally. He had been waiting his entire life for this. Dr. Minho Choi sat alone in his laboratory aboard the Retribution and stared at his hands. These hands had designed the weapon systems that armed the fleet. These hands had calculated the energy requirements for the bombs that could burn planets. These hands had made humanity into monsters. He was a scientist. Before the war, he had studied peaceful things. Energy production, terraforming, ways to make human life better. Then the Vrexians came and everything changed. The military needed weapons. Choi had the knowledge to build them. So he did. He told himself it was necessary, that humanity had no choice. But late at night, alone in his lab, Choi wondered what they had become. The weapons he designed were not meant for military targets. They were meant to kill everything, cities, forests, oceans, entire planets. Was survival worth any price? A message appeared on his computer screen. Admiral Kim wanted to see him on the bridge. Choi stood up slowly and headed for the door. There was no point in questioning now. The fleet was already here. The die was cast. 3 days passed as the human fleet moved deeper into Vrexian territory. They encountered merchant ships, cargo haulers, civilian transports. Kim ordered them all destroyed. No survivors. No witnesses, not yet. When humanity finally spoke, the Vrexians would understand that this was not a war. This was extinction. On the 4th day, the Vrexian defense fleet arrived. 800 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took up defensive positions around a military space station called Meridian. The Vrexian commander sent a standard challenge on all frequencies, demanding that the unknown fleet identify itself and state its intentions. For hours, there was only silence. Then Admiral Kim finally activated the communication system. His face appeared on every Vrexian ship's screen. He looked tired and cold. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. 30 years ago, you came to our world. You killed 3 billion of us. You took our children as slaves. You laughed while we burned. We are humanity. We remember. We have come for payment in full. No terms, no mercy. No surrender. Total destruction. The transmission ended. The human fleet advanced, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Vrexian commander stared at his screen in disbelief. The human admiral's message kept replaying in his mind. Total destruction. No surrender. These primitives actually believed they could defeat the might of the Vrexian Empire. It was almost funny. He ordered his fleet into standard battle formation. 800 warships arranged themselves in defensive layers around Meridian Station. Their shields activated, glowing bright blue in the darkness of space. Weapon systems came online. The Vrexians had fought hundreds of battles over thousands of years. They knew how to win wars. The human fleet did not slow down. It advanced in perfect formation, maintaining complete radio silence except for that one terrible message. The Vrexian commander felt the first small touch of doubt. Something about the way they moved. So precise, so cold, like machines instead of living beings. Then the humans opened fire, and the Vrexian commander understood that everything he knew about warfare was wrong. The first wave of weapons came too fast to see. They were not energy beams or plasma bursts. They were solid chunks of metal accelerated to 30% of light speed. The Vrexians' shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, might as well have been made of paper. The kinetic projectiles passed straight through and punched holes in the Vrexian dreadnoughts, like bullets through flesh. 300 Vrexian ships were crippled or destroyed in the first 60 seconds. On the bridge of the Retribution, Commander Park watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The red dots representing Vrexian ships were disappearing faster than the computer could count them. She remembered her family, her parents, her little brother, all dead because of these creatures. She felt no pity watching them die. Second wave, Admiral Kim ordered. Deploy swarm missiles. Every human destroyer in the fleet launched its payload. 10,000 missiles per ship. Not large missiles. Small ones. Each no bigger than a person's fist. But there were millions of them, and they were smart. They communicated with each other, sharing targeting data, coordinating their attacks. The Vrexian point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were simply too many. The missiles swarmed over the Vrexian fleet like angry insects. They targeted engines, weapon systems, life support. Anywhere that would hurt. Anywhere that would kill. Explosions lit up the darkness as ship after ship was torn apart by hundreds of tiny impacts. The Vrexian commander tried to coordinate a counterattack, but his computer systems were failing. Strange code was running through his ship's network. Weapon targeting was wrong. Shield frequencies were shifting randomly. Communications were cutting in and out. It took him too long to realize what was happening. The humans were hacking them, not just jamming their signals, actually breaking into their computer systems and taking control. The Vrexians had never encountered anything like it. Their cybersecurity was supposed to be unbreakable. Dr. Choi watched the battle from his laboratory and felt sick. He had designed the hacking programs. He knew exactly what they did. They did not just disable enemy ships. They made the Vrexians suffer. Life support would fail slowly. Artificial gravity would cut out, leaving crews floating helplessly. Medical systems would shut down while wounded sailors bled to death. It was cruelty disguised as tactics. He wanted to turn away, but he forced himself to watch. This was his responsibility. He had built these weapons. The least he could do was witness what they did. Captain Lee got the order he had been waiting for. Launch fighters. He punched his engines and shot out of the carrier bay at speeds that would have killed a normal pilot. But Lee was not normal. He had been trained since childhood to withstand forces that would tear a regular human apart. His squadron followed him into the chaos of the battle. 12 fighters against what remained of the Vrexian fleet. It should have been suicide. Instead, it was a massacre. Lee's fighter had technology the Vrexians could not match. Micro-jump drives that let him teleport short distances. Artificial intelligence that predicted enemy movements before they happened. Weapons that never missed. He flew through the Vrexian defensive fire like it did not exist. A Vrexian cruiser tried to target him with its main guns. Lee's ship vanished in a flash of light and reappeared behind the cruiser. He fired a single missile directly into the ship's engine core. The cruiser exploded in a ball of white fire. Lee laughed as he pulled his fighter through a spiral that would have torn a Vrexian craft to pieces. This was what he had trained for. This was what he was born to do. He was death incarnate and he loved every second of it. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, all 800 Vrexian warships were destroyed. Meridian Station was the expanding cloud of debris. The human fleet had lost 23 ships damaged and 2 destroyed. It was not even a fair fight. It was an execution. Admiral Kim watched the last Vrexian ship break apart on his screen. Escape pods were launching from the dying vessels. Hundreds of them, thousands. Each one contained Vrexian sailors hoping to be rescued. Park looked at him expectantly. Standard military protocol required them to recover enemy survivors for interrogation, but Kim did not give that order. He simply turned away from the screen and walked to his ready room. Park understood. They were not here to take prisoners. The human fleet left the escape pods drifting in space. There was no rescue coming for them. They would die slowly of oxygen deprivation, or freeze to death when their pod's power ran out. It would take hours, maybe days. Kim considered it merciful compared to what the Vrexians had done to Earth. Dr. Choi could not stay silent anymore. He left his laboratory and went to the bridge. He found Kim in his private quarters staring at a photo of Earth before the attack. Beautiful blue oceans. Green land. White clouds. All gone now, Admiral, Choi said carefully. We are leaving them to die in space. We could recover the survivors. Kim did not turn around. He kept staring at the photo. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet, very tired. They did not rescue our escape pods 30 years ago, Doctor. They did not show mercy to our children when they begged. This fleet exists for one reason, to ensure the Vrexians understand the price of what they did. We will not deviate from that purpose. But if we do this, we are no better than them. Kim finally turned to face him. His eyes were hard as stone. You are absolutely correct, Doctor. We are not better than them. But we will still be here when this is over. They will not. That is all that matters. Choi wanted to argue, but he saw the look in Kim's eyes and knew it was pointless. The Admiral was not a man anymore. He was vengeance given form. There would be no mercy, no compromise, only destruction. News of the battle reached Vrexia Prime within hours. Emperor Valdris convened an emergency session of his war council. The room was filled with his most experienced military leaders. They reviewed the battle data in stunned silence. 800 ships destroyed in 4 hours. It was impossible. It had to be a mistake, but the data did not lie. The humans had weapons the Vrexians had never seen. Technology that should not exist. Ships that moved with impossible precision. It was as if the humans had taken 30 years and leaped forward 1,000 years in advancement. How did they do this? Valdris demanded. How did primitives build such a fleet? His chief scientist provided the answer that nobody wanted to hear. Your Majesty, we believe the humans dedicated their entire civilization to this one goal. Every resource, every person, everything they had went into building this fleet. They turned their whole species into a weapon. Valdris leaned back in his throne and felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. Real, genuine fear. He had underestimated these humans. He had thought them weak. He was wrong, and now they were coming for him. Mobilize the entire fleet, Valdris ordered. I want every ship we have at the Kronos Expanse. If the humans want war, we will give them war. We will drown them in our numbers. The human fleet continued its advance. They moved from system to system, destroying any Vrexian presence they encountered. Outposts, mining stations, colonies. Nothing survived. Kim left no witnesses and took no prisoners. The message was clear. This was not conquest. This was extermination. On every human ship, the same words were displayed on computer screens and painted on bulkheads. 3 simple sentences that explained everything. Remember Earth, remember New Sol, remember the 3 billion. The crew needed no other motivation. They had all lost someone to the Vrexians. They were all here for the same reason. Justice had failed. Now came revenge. The Kronos Expanse was a natural fortress. Massive asteroid fields stretched for millions of kilometers. Unstable stars threw off radiation that made sensors unreliable. Space itself seemed twisted and dangerous. Any attacking fleet would be forced through narrow channels where they could be destroyed easily. Emperor Valdris had assembled 8,000 warships to defend this critical choke point. It was the largest military force the Vrexian Empire had gathered in over a century. The ships were arranged in 3 defensive layers, each one stronger than the last. Orbital weapons platforms floated between the asteroids. Minefields blocked the obvious approach routes. It was perfect. Valdris himself had come to oversee the defense aboard his command dreadnought, the Eternal Glory. The massive ship was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. He stood on the bridge and watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. The humans would have to come through the expanse. There was no other route to the core systems, and when they did, he would crush them. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the Kronos Expanse and stopped. For 6 hours, nothing happened. The 2 fleets simply watched each other across the void. Vrexian commanders grew nervous. Why were the humans waiting? What were they planning? Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the Retribution and studied the navigation data. His officers had been working for weeks on the calculations. The unstable space of the expanse was supposed to be impossible to jump through using faster-than-light drives. The radiation and gravity distortions would tear ships apart. But the word impossible meant something different to humanity now. Are the calculations complete? Kim asked quietly. Commander Park nodded. Her face showed no emotion, but Kim could see the tension in her shoulders. What they were about to attempt had never been done before. The quantum computers predicted a 15% casualty rate, just from the jump itself. 3,000 ships would never arrive. Their crews would die horribly as their vessels were torn apart by dimensional shearing. Acceptable losses, Kim said. Execute the plan. The human fleet split. 30,000 ships remained at the edge of the expanse, facing the Vrexian defenses head-on, but 20,000 ships activated their jump drives and vanished from normal space. They reappeared behind the Vrexian lines, having jumped through space that every expert said was unjumpable. 2,800 ships never completed the jump. They died in the attempt, their crews vaporized in microseconds. Kim had known this would happen. He had accepted it as necessary. Victory required sacrifice, and humanity had learned to pay any price. The Vrexian fleet suddenly found itself surrounded. From the front, the main human force began its advance. From behind, 17,000 human ships opened fire at point-blank range. The perfect defensive position became a death trap in seconds. Captain Lee launched from his carrier along with 300 other fighter pilots. Their target was the Vrexian command ships. Take out the leadership and the rest would fall into chaos. Lee's computer systems identified the priority targets and painted them red on his display. 42 command vessels scattered throughout the Vrexian fleet. His squadron went to work with surgical precision. The fighters used their micro-jump drives to appear directly beside each command ship. They fired specialized missiles that punched through armor and detonated inside the bridges. It took 8 minutes to destroy all 42 targets. 8 minutes to cut the head off the Vrexian military. Lee felt nothing as he killed. No joy, no guilt, just cold satisfaction that he was doing his job well. Each destroyed ship meant fewer Vrexians to threaten humanity. Each dead enemy meant his people were safer. It was simple mathematics. The Vrexian fleet tried to reorganize, but without central command, the individual ships could not coordinate their defenses. They fought bravely, firing everything they had at the human attackers. But bravery meant nothing against overwhelming technological superiority. The humans had better weapons, better shields, better tactics. The outcome was inevitable. Emperor Valdris watched his fleet die around him and realized that he had made a terrible mistake. He had assumed the humans would fight like civilized beings, that they would follow the established rules of warfare. But humans had no rules. They fought to win, regardless of cost or honor or tradition. They were savages wearing the mask of civilization. His communication officer managed to establish a direct link to the human flagship. Valdris swallowed his pride and opened negotiations. Perhaps he could buy time. Perhaps he could find terms the humans would accept. Admiral Kim's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than Valdris had imagined. Tired, almost sad. But his eyes were cold and merciless. "You are savages," Valdris shouted. "You violate every code of civilized warfare. You have no honor." Kim replied calmly. "We learned from you, Emperor. You taught us there are no rules when you burned our world. You taught us that mercy is foolishness when you enslaved our children. We are excellent students. I can offer you territory," Valdris said desperately. "Resources. Technology. Name your price and it is yours." "There is no price," Kim said softly. "There is only the end. Your species dies today, Emperor, all of it. Every last one." He closed the communication channel. Valdris stared at the blank screen in horror. They were not here to conquer. They were here to exterminate. The realization came too late. The Eternal Glory shuddered as weapons fire struck its shields. The bridge crew scrambled to respond, but it was pointless. They were already dead. They just did not know it yet. The Retribution activated its experimental weapon. Humans called it the Gravity Hammer. It was Dr. Choi's most terrible creation. The weapon created an artificial black hole that lasted for only a fraction of a second. But that was long enough. Space collapsed around the Eternal Glory. The massive dreadnought, 3 kilometers of advanced engineering and imperial pride, was crushed to a point smaller than an atom. Emperor Valdris and his entire command staff ceased to exist in an instant. The black hole evaporated, leaving only empty space where the ship had been. Dr. Choi watched from his laboratory and felt his hands shaking. He had designed that weapon. He had calculated exactly how much energy was needed to collapse space itself. He had turned theoretical physics into a tool for murder. And the worst part was that it worked perfectly. The remaining Vrexian fleet broke when they saw their emperor die. Some ships tried to flee. Others attempted to surrender, broadcasting white flag protocols on all frequencies. It made no difference. The human ships pursued them methodically. Every ship was destroyed. Every escape pod was left adrift. There would be no survivors to tell the tale. Choi left his laboratory and went to the medical bay. He found a junior officer there, a young woman who was being treated for minor burns. She smiled when she saw him. "Did you see it, Doctor?" she asked excitedly. "Did you see what your weapon did to their flagship?" "It was beautiful." Choi looked at her and saw himself reflected. Young, eager, convinced they were doing the right thing. He wanted to explain to her that what they were doing was not beautiful. It was monstrous. They were committing genocide on an industrial scale. But he knew she would not understand. None of them would. "This is genocide," Choi said quietly. The officer's smile did not fade. "Yes, sir. Just like what they did to us." Her voice carried no guilt, only satisfaction. Choi turned and left without another word. He wandered the corridors of the Retribution, looking at the faces of the crew. They were all so certain, so convinced they were justified. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was the only way to ensure humanity survived, or maybe they had become exactly what they fought against. The Battle of Kronos Expanse ended after 12 hours of continuous fighting. 8,000 Vrexian warships were destroyed. The human fleet lost 4,200 ships. It was the bloodiest engagement of the war so far, but the strategic result was absolute. The path to Vrexia Prime was open. Admiral Kim convened a brief meeting with his senior staff. Captain Lee reported fighter losses were within acceptable parameters. Commander Park confirmed that repairs were underway, and the fleet would be ready to advance within 6 hours. Dr. Choi said nothing. He simply sat in the corner and stared at his hands. "We move immediately," Kim ordered. "No rest, no delays. We push forward to Vrexia Prime before they have time to organize new defenses. This ends soon." The meeting ended. The officers left to carry out their duties. Kim remained alone on the bridge looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Vrexia Prime, the throne world, the heart of the Empire. Soon it would burn like Earth had burned. Justice would be complete. But late that night, alone in his quarters, Kim allowed himself a moment of doubt. Was this justice? Or was it just revenge wearing justice as a disguise? He thought about the escape pods they had left behind. The thousands of Vrexian sailors dying slowly in the cold of space. They had families too. Children who would never see them again. Kim picked up the photograph of Earth he kept on his desk. He traced his finger over the outline of the continents. All gone now. 3 billion dead. Could any amount of Vrexian blood balance that equation? Could revenge ever truly satisfy the need for justice? He put the photograph down and turned off the light. It did not matter anymore. The fleet was already in motion. The final act would play out whether he doubted or not. Vrexia Prime awaited, and with it the end of the Vrexian Empire forever. Vrexia Prime hung in space like a jewel. City lights covered every continent, glowing bright against the darkness. Orbital stations ringed the planet in perfect geometric patterns. It was beautiful. It was ancient. It was home to 14 billion Vrexian souls, and it was about to die. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked at the tactical display. Even without the main fleet, Vrexia Prime had formidable defenses. Millions of automated weapons platforms, planetary shield generators, ground-based artillery that could hit targets in orbit. The Vrexians had built their throne world to be unbreakable. They had never imagined anyone would dare attack it. Dr. Choi requested an emergency meeting. He came to the bridge looking exhausted and desperate. He had not slept in 3 days. Dark circles hung under his eyes. His hands trembled as he held up a data pad. "Admiral," Choi said, "I have reviewed the scans of Vrexia Prime. There are 14 billion people down there. Most of them are civilians, children, non-combatants. We can target only military installations. We do not need to kill everyone." Commander Park turned away from her console. Her face was unreadable. Captain Lee, who had come to the bridge to report fighter readiness, laughed bitterly. "They did not limit themselves to military targets when they came to Earth," Lee said coldly. "Why should we show them mercy they never showed us?" "Because we are supposed to be better than them," Choi shot back. "If we kill everyone, we are no different than the monsters who attacked us." Admiral Kim held up his hand for silence. Both men stopped arguing. Kim looked at each of his officers in turn. Then he spoke in a voice that was very quiet and very final. "Doctor, I understand your concern, but we did not come here to be merciful. We came here to ensure this never happens to anyone else. If we leave survivors, they will rebuild. They will rearm. In 100 years or 1,000, they will return for revenge and the cycle continues. We end it here. Completely." "Then we are no better than them," Choi whispered. "You are right," Kim said. "We are not. But we will still be here when this is over." "They will not. That is all that matters. Execute the plan." Choi stared at him in horror, then turned and left the bridge. He returned to his quarters and locked the door. He sat on his bed and put his head in his hands. Outside his window, the assault on Vrexia Prime began. The attack came in 3 phases. First, the human capital ships moved forward to eliminate the orbital defenses. The Vrexian satellites opened fire, destroying hundreds of human vessels in the first minutes. But humanity had learned to accept losses that would have been unthinkable before the war. Ships were replaceable. Victory was not. Kinetic projectiles rained down at speeds that turned them into weapons of mass destruction. Each impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear bomb. The orbital infrastructure that took the Vrexians 1,000 years to build was shattered in 6 hours. Defense platforms exploded. Satellites tumbled from orbit. The ring of lights around Vrexia Prime went dark. Phase 2 began immediately. Human cruisers moved into low orbit and started bombarding the surface. They targeted military installations first. Command bunkers vanished in balls of fire. Weapons factories were reduced to craters. Spaceports were obliterated. Within 24 hours, Vrexia Prime had no organized military left. But the bombardment did not stop there. Power grids were destroyed. Water treatment plants were eliminated. Communication networks were severed. The human fleet was not just defeating the Vrexian military. They were erasing civilization itself. Captain Lee led his fighter squadrons in precision strikes against government buildings. He personally destroyed the Imperial Palace, the seat of Vrexian power for 3,000 years. The ancient structure collapsed in flames. Lee felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Every building destroyed was justice delivered. On the surface of Vrexia Prime, panic spread through the cities. Millions tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Underground shelters filled to capacity. Families huddled together in basements and subway tunnels, praying the bombardment would end. But the humans were just getting started. Admiral Kim gave the order for Phase 3, the atmospheric ignition bombs. These weapons used a fusion reaction to set the planet's oxygen-rich atmosphere on fire. Dr. Choi had discovered the principle years ago during peaceful research. He had never imagined his work would be used for this. The first bomb detonated over the largest continent. A wave of fire spread from the detonation point, moving faster than sound. It consumed forests in seconds. Cities vanished in walls of flame. The atmosphere itself became a weapon. Within hours, 3 continents were burning. Commander Park stood at her station and watched the planet die. She thought about her family. Her parents had owned a small restaurant in the capital city of New Seoul. Her little brother had been 10 years old. The Vrexians had killed them all. She had spent 30 years dreaming of this moment, so why did she feel so empty? A transmission came from the surface. It was from a civilian shelter deep underground. A female Vrexian voice spoke in broken human language. The audio quality was terrible, full of static and interference. But the words were clear enough. "Please stop. We have children here, babies. We did nothing to you, please." The bridge fell completely silent. Everyone looked at Admiral Kim. He stood motionless, staring at the tactical display. Commander Park found herself speaking before she could stop herself. "Admiral, we could spare the shelters. Target only surface structures." Kim thought about it. For a long moment he said nothing. He remembered his own children. Twin daughters. They had been 7 years old when the Vrexians came. He never found their bodies. There was nothing left to find. "No," Kim said finally. "Deploy bunker penetrator munitions. All shelters. Complete extermination, sir." "Yes, sir." Park heard the words leave her mouth. She turned back to her console and gave the orders. The weapons were launched. Deep underground, the Vrexian shelters were breached one by one. The screaming stopped. In his quarters, Dr. Choi heard the order through the ship's intercom system. He walked to his personal locker and retrieved his service pistol. He sat on his bed and placed the weapon against his temple. His finger rested on the trigger. 1 pull, 1 second of pain, then nothing. No more guilt. No more responsibility. But he did not pull the trigger. Killing himself would not undo what humanity had done. It would not save anyone. It would just be one more death in an ocean of death. He set the weapon down and wept. Outside, Vrexia Prime continued to burn. The bombardment lasted 72 hours. When it ended, Vrexia Prime was dead. The atmosphere was toxic with ash and radiation. The oceans had boiled away, leaving empty basins of cracked earth. Every city was rubble. Every forest was ash. Every living thing was gone. 14 billion Vrexians had become 14 billion corpses. The human fleet had paid a price too. 12,000 ships were destroyed in the final assault. 300,000 human personnel were dead. But Admiral Kim considered it acceptable. Fair, even. The Vrexians had killed 3 billion humans. Now humanity had killed 14 billion of them. The mathematics of revenge were complete. Captain Lee returned from his final sortie and climbed out of his fighter. His crew chief congratulated him on his kill count. Lee nodded absently and headed for the showers. He felt tired but satisfied. Justice had been delivered. The Vrexians would never threaten anyone again. Commander Park remained at her station long after her shift ended. She watched the dead planet rotate slowly on the view screen. She had wanted this for 30 years. Revenge, justice, whatever name you gave it, now she had it. And all she felt was hollow. Her family was still dead. Revenge did not bring them back. It just created more corpses. Admiral Kim called a fleet-wide meeting. Every ship's captain attended via hologram. Kim stood before them and delivered a simple message. Vrexia Prime was destroyed, but the war was not over. There were 46 other Vrexian colonies scattered across known space. Each one would be visited. Each one would be destroyed. When they were finished, the Vrexian species would be extinct. Some captains cheered. Others nodded grimly. A few looked uncomfortable but said nothing. The decision had been made long ago. The fleet existed for one purpose. They would see it through to the end. That night, Kim stood alone in his ready room and looked at the photograph of Earth one last time. Then he put it away in a drawer. He did not need reminders anymore. What was done was done. They would finish what they started. And when it was over, he would retire to some quiet world and try to forget. Though he knew he never would. The human fleet prepared to jump to the next target system. Behind them, Vrexia Prime smoldered. A dead world circling a living star. A monument to what happens when humanity is pushed too far. A warning to every species in the galaxy. Leave Earth alone, or face total annihilation. 6 months. That was how long it took to destroy the remaining Vrexian colonies. 46 worlds. Each one followed the same pattern. The human fleet arrived. The defenses were overwhelmed. The population was exterminated. Nothing survived. Not buildings. Not forests. Not even bacteria. Some worlds fought back. Some surrendered immediately. A few tried to negotiate. It made no difference. Admiral Kim's orders were absolute. No survivors. No exceptions. By the end of the campaign, 47 billion Vrexians were dead. The species was extinct. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The human fleet lost 18,000 ships total. 450,000 personnel died in the fighting. Kim considered the price acceptable. Humanity had avenged its dead. The species that almost destroyed them was gone forever. The threat was eliminated. Earth was safe. Other civilizations watched the genocide with horror and fascination. The Korthan Federation, the Zalian Collective, the Tarn Commonwealth, all of them were powerful species with their own empires. All of them had considered humanity weak, primitive, easy prey. They changed their minds quickly. Diplomatic messages flooded into Earth. Trade agreements. Non-aggression pacts, treaties of friendship. Every major power suddenly wanted to be humanity's ally, or at least wanted to make sure they were not humanity's enemy. The message was clear. Leave Earth alone or become the next Vrexia. The human fleet returned to Earth orbit to celebrations unlike anything in history. Every city on every human world erupted in joy. Parades filled the streets. People danced and sang. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. The species that tried to destroy them was gone. It was the greatest military victory in human history. Admiral Kim, Commander Park, and Captain Lee were treated as heroes. Statues were built in their honor. Schools were named after them. History books would remember them forever as the leaders who saved humanity. They gave speeches. They attended ceremonies. They smiled for cameras. But late at night, alone in their rooms, each of them carried the weight of what they had done. Dr. Choi did not attend the celebrations. He watched from his apartment as the crowds cheered in the streets below. He could not share their joy. He had designed the weapons that killed 47 billion people. His hands had built the bombs that burned planets. He was a mass murderer wearing the uniform of a scientist. A small group started forming around Choi. Philosophers, religious leaders, some retired military officers, people who questioned what humanity had become. They pointed out that humans had exterminated an entire species, including billions of non-combatants, children, babies, the innocent and the guilty alike. They argued that humanity had become the monster it fought against. Choi agreed to do an interview. It was broadcast globally. He sat in a simple chair and spoke directly to the camera. His voice was tired but clear. "We defeated the Vrexians," Choi said. "That was justified. They attacked us. They killed billions. They deserved to be stopped. But we did not stop there. We hunted down every last one of them, their soldiers and their civilians. their adults and their children. We killed them all. That was not justice. That was genocide, and history will judge us for it. The interview caused controversy. Some agreed with Choi, many did not. Most people felt the Vrexians got exactly what they deserved. They started the war. They killed first. Humanity just finished what the Vrexians began. If the Vrexians did not want to be exterminated, they should not have tried to exterminate humanity. Admiral Kim was asked to respond. He agreed to give one public speech on the matter. The event was held in Geneva, the symbolic heart of human government. Every seat was filled. The speech was broadcast to every human world and monitored by dozens of alien species. What Kim said would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations. Kim walked to the podium slowly. He looked older than his years. The war had aged him in ways that went beyond time. When he spoke, his voice was steady but tired. 30 years ago, we were nearly destroyed. The Vrexians saw us as weak, as prey. They were wrong. We rebuilt. We adapted. We became stronger than they could imagine. Some say we went too far, that we should have shown mercy, that we should have spared the innocent. Kim paused and looked out at the audience. His eyes were hard but honest. To those people I say this. Where was mercy when our cities burned? Where was compassion when our children were enslaved? The Vrexians taught us a lesson. In an existential war, there are no innocent parties. You either win completely or you eventually die. We chose to win. We are not proud of what we did, but we would do it again. Every species in this galaxy now knows that humanity can be a friend, a partner and ally. But if you come for us with violence, if you threaten our existence, we will respond with force that destroys you completely. We will not stop until the threat is eliminated permanently. This is not a philosophy we chose. It is one the Vrexians forced upon us. Let this be remembered. Humanity does not start wars, but we will finish them. The applause lasted for 20 minutes. Kim left the stage without another word. He would never speak publicly again. 3 months later, Kim retired from military service. He bought a small homestead on a remote frontier colony. He lived alone, growing crops and raising animals. He refused all interview requests. He avoided all contact with the outside world. People who met him said he looked haunted, old before his time. He died peacefully in his sleep at age 72. He was buried in a simple grave with no monument. Just his name and dates. Commander Park accepted a promotion to admiral and continued serving. She became a leading voice for maintaining military superiority. She argued that humanity must never again be vulnerable. Under her leadership, Earth built the most powerful fleet in known space. She served for 25 more years before retiring with honors. In private, she sometimes wondered if they had gone too far, but she never said so publicly. Captain Lee became a legend. He trained the next generation of fighter pilots. He wrote a popular memoir about the war. He felt no regret about what happened. The Vrexians attacked Earth, humanity responded. That was all there was to it. He lived to age 89 and died in a training accident, still flying fighters when most people his age could barely walk. Dr. Choi left military service and dedicated his life to studying ethics and alien cultures. He wrote extensively about the war and its moral implications. He established the Vrexian Memorial Foundation to preserve records of Vrexian culture, music, art, literature, history. He wanted people to remember the Vrexians as more than monsters. They had been a living civilization with families and dreams, and humanity had erased them from existence. Choi hoped that by preserving their memory, humanity might learn to temper revenge with wisdom. He died at age 91, still believing there had been a better way. In the century after the war, humanity became a major galactic power. Trade flourished. Cultural exchanges occurred. Human colonies spread to hundreds of worlds. But every interaction with aliens carried an undercurrent of fear. Everyone knew what humanity was capable of when threatened. Diplomatic incidents were resolved peacefully because nobody wanted to risk becoming the next Vrexia. Earth was rebuilt. The population recovered. New cities rose from the ashes of the old ones, but the scars remained. Several major cities were preserved as ruins, memorials to the dead. Each year on the anniversary of the attack, humanity observed Remembrance Day, a moment of silence for the 3 billion who died. A reminder of why the species must never again allow itself to be vulnerable. 100 years after the genocide, a group of human students visited the Vrexian Memorial Archive. They walked through holographic displays showing Vrexian cities before the destruction. Vrexian families, Vrexian children playing. The students were quiet and thoughtful. A young woman stopped in front of a display showing Vrexia Prime from orbit. Beautiful, vibrant, alive. She turned to her companion. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. All these deaths? Her companion thought about it. We are still here, he said finally. That was the answer our ancestors gave. Is survival always worth any price? I do not know, but I am glad it is not a choice I have to make. They left the archive in silence. Outside, the sun shone on a peaceful earth, rebuilt, thriving. Humanity had survived. But the cost of that survival would be debated for millennia to come. Far across the galaxy, a Korthan historian completed a comprehensive study of the Vrexian extinction. Her final paragraph read like this. The humans possessed a quality that the Vrexians catastrophically underestimated. When faced with existential threat, they did not surrender or compromise. They transformed their entire civilization into a weapon of revenge. They became the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known. The question remains, are they still? The galaxy continued to watch humanity, waiting for the answer,